Hey guys, today I want to talk about a video series that I have wanted to make for a while, and since Epic made it pretty difficult to stream for this following month, I figured it would be a good time as any to start this series. So today I want to talk about not only what I'm going to be having in store for you guys today, but what I have planned. So today is going to be the top 10 most relevant / effective weapons in Save the World. Now, I'm going to get a couple of disclaimers out of the way right off the bat. I won't be counting the mythic weapons, simply because they are pretty much unanimously understood to be the best in their category no matter what. Like, this is pretty much the best hardware, this is pretty much the best pistol, so on and so forth. So, obviously the mythic weapons are insane, use them if you have them. The list would be, only 5 normal weapons if I included them. Also, there are a ton of great weapons in this game. In fact, I'll just break a little bit of professionalism, just go to monitor capture, because I use my own video for reference here. I did an entire video with Bens and Skulls, friends of mine, who are max level players, who've been playing as long or longer than I have, ranking every single ranged weapon in the game. And it took us 47 minutes of a lot of discussion to figure out this list. And even then, to this day, I don't agree with everything on here simply because the game is dynamic. It depends on your loadout, it depends on how you play, it depends on a lot of different preference things. Like you'll see on this list, I have a couple of shotguns on there, I have a sword on there, and if you don't use shotguns or swords, then this list won't relate to you personally. So I believe every single person is going to have a different opinion or a take on a top 10 list, and that's why I wanted to take a more objective approach. What I wanted to do here today was take the most meta relevant, meaning like these are the weapons that, YouTubers get hyped about a new weapon's release. They say it's the best in the game, they give you a bunch of numbers, everybody gets excited, but like, what I'm talking about here is a few months later when the dust settles, what are the actual best weapons that I pull out in the hardest fights. For example, the Bundlebuss is on the list, spoiler alert, but that's a weapon that doesn't see a lot of day-to-day use. I don't know of many players who actually pull this weapon out, but when it comes to taking down a boss fight or, a really, really hard mission, the Bundlebuss just does something that, Until the Wrath came out, most weapons can't. It just packs a lot of punch at once, and it's very effective for that. I used this for about 90 of my 100 Storm King wins. That's a future video coming up. That's a weapon that, I feel deserved a spot on the list, but it isn't exactly a day-to-day weapon, and there are plenty of others on here that I'll talk about later. And then the other thing that I wanted to get out of the way is the fact that because this list is so complicated, if you don't see something on here, it doesn't mean that it's bad, okay? Even if you see something on here that you don't think should be here, everything here will be from my own personal experience, and I want to try to keep it as objective as possible. And the other thing I addressed right at the front is what I have planned. So this will be more of an opening. So what I want to do today is talk about the best weapons in the game, and then what I want to do in the following days and weeks is talk about the best weapons from every single category. So I've done this before, videos on screen, you'll see the best heroes, all 4 categories plus the supercut right up at the top middle there. I will link all 5 of those videos in the description. Spoiler alert, the supercut is literally just the other 4 combined into one video, where I talked about all of the best heroes in Save the World. That was not confined to a list, I simply discussed every single hero from each category worth talking about. And so those will be future videos that I'm going to discuss, mentioning all the best weapons in their respective categories, but today, let's kick off the list with the top 10 weapons. So, I already kind of teased it, but it's the Bundlebuss in the number 10 slot. Now, to say this again right off the bat, disclaimer, this list is ordered from, worst to best in my opinion, but make no mistake, all of the weapons in the top 10 are very, very good and definitely dependent on whatever you're using them for, which is why I put the Bundlebuss in the 10th slot. I wanted to talk about this right away simply because of what I said earlier, so I'll be quick. It's really weirdly overpowered for normal missions. Like, the only thing you should really be using this for is if there's a mini boss or mist monsters. It shoots too slow for the common enemies, and it's literally overpowered because 8 shots from this thing can one-shot most mist monsters in most zones, so you don't really need it for that. But when it comes to a boss fight, I was switching back and forth between 2 Bundlebusses during, like I said earlier, about 90 of my 100 plus Storm King fights. So these, if for the right situation, the Bundlebuss is by far one of the most powerful weapons in the game. Next on my list is, again, we're going in the spirit of meta-relevant / usefulness. So we'll be talking about the Obliterator, and the Obliterator wouldn't be well talked about or discussed without mentioning the Neon Sniper. So the Obliterator I put on here for a couple of reasons. It's not the strongest sniper in the game, I don't believe. I don't think it headshots as much. It might crit for the most, that might be true, but you know, a lot of people might not use this as their main sniper because it kicks a lot and it's hard to use, but defenders love this weapon. And trust me, in the highest zones, handing off a crit rating crit damage, that's why I always have at least 3 of these crafted. Crit rating crit damage obliterators to my nearest defender, you know, 3 of them is definitely a regular thing that I do. And utility is very important because I use the obliterators to clear trees and, you know, houses for death pits all the time. They are very, very, very useful for that. In that respect, you know, like I mentioned, it might not come off immediately as a strongest weapon, should be in the top 10, but when you get down to it, at least I and friends that I play with end up using the obliterator quite a lot. So I believe it deserves number 9 on our list. Number 8 is going to be probably a controversial one. Again, this will depend on if you like melee weapons, but it's the Storm King's Ravage. Oh wait, I'm not talking about those. It's little brother, the Spectral Blade. So, in my opinion, once again, I'm not really a melee player. I don't use a ton of melees. I'll admit it right now, I might not be the most qualified to talk about them, but what I do know is the Spectral Blade is one of the most diverse and effective swords in the entire game. It is so powerful that I have never once, while using a melee character, felt the need to use another weapon. I say need because, sure, you might want to change it up, have a little bit of fun with some other stuff, but if you're just trying to get the job done, I have brought the Spectral Blade plus the correct ninja loadout, link below, into the highest zones. We're talking 144 players, 174 power level husks, and I was not the one holding the team back in those missions. So the Spectral Blade is an extremely useful weapon, not to mention a great utility. If you up that heavy attack, you can get around pretty quickly. Now, I did, you know, casually link that ninja loadout, but I will address one thing that has changed since its upload, and that is Monster Smash. If you are going to be using any melee loadout, I highly recommend giving Arlene Iza at least the courtesy of a consideration, because that life leech on every single hit is super useful for staying in the fight. Now, number 7 on my list is once again a weapon that a lot of people might not see coming, but this weapon gained quite a lot of credit with me when it first released because of how much it impressed me and how well it compared to some of the top weapons in the game. I'll say it before I continue that I believe this should have been higher on my list, but, you know, you gotta order them somehow, and that is the Gammatron 9000. Again, some of you might not have ever even used this weapon, but if you haven't, I would highly recommend giving it a try if you have it. This did come out as purple schematic, so if you played during the sci-fi event, you might have one just sitting down here. But if you've used this weapon, then you might know that it is surprising. So it is a 3-burst weapon, which might turn off a lot of people, but if you hold left click, it actually deals an extremely high damage per second. The Gammatron is a pretty boring weapon in that respect. It's simply exactly that. You hold left click and the rapid burst shoot as if it's a fully auto weapon, and trust me, when you pull this thing out, the damage will speak for itself. Moving on from the Gammatron 9000, let's talk about the last one in the bottom half of our list, which is the Black Drum Shotgun. Once again, something I expect a little bit of kickback with, because I know a lot of people really don't like the black metal set, but trust me, when it comes to combat, I have not seen very many shotguns that can even do what this weapon can do. The Black Drum Shotgun shoots 2 projectiles very quickly. I mean, you can't not shoot 2 projectiles, so basically every shot is doubled. So if you say it does 30,000, it's going to shoot twice for 60,000, and if you kill an enemy fast enough, you can even sometimes hit the enemy behind it. Stunning or knocking back an enemy reduces your current health by a good bit, and that extra explosive damage that comes out of that just does an area of effect damage to everything you're shooting at. This weapon is, if you hit a couple of nice crits and you have a correct shotgun loadout, link below, it is an extremely good weapon for taking down mist monsters and high-level enemies extremely quickly. It's locked to physical and fire, but I have not seen many situations where it holds it back. Of course, if there's a smasher or something, that's an element. That half damage is going to hurt a lot, but that's true with any physical weapon, and I do believe that the Black Drum sits very comfortably as one of the top 5 shotguns in the entire game. The reason that I put it on this list, other than some other ones like the Double Boiler, which also shoots slow but packs an insanely high punch, is because it's just more usable, in my opinion. The way that it shoots 2 shots and you don't have to reload it after every single couple shots like the Double Boiler, a magazine size of 2 really holds a weapon like this back. I find it that it's more useful in, you know, regular day-to-day missions. That being said, it is more of a difficult weapon to use, because obviously a weapon that hurts you in the process of using it is something that you're going to want to definitely check, and that's why I recommend using Blast from the Past, Coconuts, and just being careful, because even though you'll be low on health, the damage will definitely be worth it if you can manage manage that wisely. Now to the top 5, and I'm going to kick it off with an old favorite of mine. This won't surprise many of you, but I'm going to be talking about the Hemlock, which surprises me, because honestly, this, depending on how I was feeling when I made this list, probably could have been in the number 1 slot, tied with a few others. You'll see what I did later. But the Hemlock is one of the classics, and it's only in the number 5 slot, probably because of its 6 perk. So if you can get a 6 perk that snares the enemy, that's a very, very good one. But that extra shield that it gives you used to be very, very useful until they added the Blast from the Past team perk. So having a 6 perk that buffs your shield when you don't have one is kind of a major drawback, but it doesn't really matter when the weapon is as powerful as this. Again, I can't really illustrate that without just putting the weapon in your hand, but you're just going to have to trust me that this thing is just a powerhouse. So the Hemlock is an old favorite of mine because it came out over a year ago at this point, but if it returns to the game, I highly recommend checking this out and speccing it properly. A link to all of my videos will be in the description below. There's not much more to say about the Hemlock. It is probably, in my opinion, one of the standouts from the medieval set, even though it's not the only good one from that set. The Hemlock is just a fantastic all-around SMG. Number 4 on my list is, again, probably not going to surprise people. I think for the top 5 here, you're not going to see too many surprises because I would imagine most people know what the best weapons are, and that is the little brother of the Blastotron 9000, the Blastotron Mini. The Blastotron Mini, ironically, the SMG is doing way more damage than the AR. This thing, again, is just a powerhouse. I mean, you put the right pistol loadout on this thing, which you don't even need anymore, seeing as pistol loadouts affect SMGs as well, and the AR loadouts affect SMGs. There are a lot of heroes that can help this weapon nowadays, and it is just insane. I think when it first came out, if you use the right loadout, this thing could do 1,000,000 DPS, and there's just really no bad way to go about this. This was one of the very few weapons when I made my perk guide on this that I recommended running a reload speed perk instead of damage here because it didn't need it. The Blastotron Mini was doing so much damage that it didn't need the help. It was a very, very, very powerful weapon, and to this day is still one of my regular energy weapons. If I'm feeling lazy and I'm not using a very powerful loadout, or I'm just kind of fooling around with my friends, this is the kind of weapon I pull out when I'm running a constructor and I just want something that'll just melt everything in sight, because this will do exactly that. The Blastotron Mini is absolutely one of the standouts of the sci-fi set, and if you haven't tried it out, I think you should, pull it out of the collection book, wipe off the dust, and just see for yourself. Number 3 on the list is going to start a trend that will only continue, and that is yet another sci-fi weapon. This is basically the weapon that put the Black Drum so low on the list, and that is the Pulsar 9000. Once again, probably going to be a controversial pick because shotguns, like I said, aren't everybody's forte, but if you've ever put on the correct loadout and ran the Pulsar 9000, you will find that encampments are no longer difficult, crowds of enemies disappear before your eyes, and even smashers don't always have time to charge if you hear crits. The Pulsar 9000 stands crowned, chief among everything, as many people regard it as the most powerful shotgun in the game, and that is not only because of its damage, but because of its area of effect. That ring that it shoots just goes through all the enemies in front of you. It doesn't have an extremely high range, but everything in front of that and everything affected by that ring basically just disappears in front of you, and the Pulsar 9000 is an absolute treat to use if you can just stay close quarters. That being said, as we're making this video, the new mythic weapons haven't come out, and it's rumored that a shotgun and a sniper will follow. There might not be any truth to that, but obviously, any mythic weapon might top this. But again, the Pulsar 9000 is one of, if not the best, all-around shotgun in the game. However, it's not actually the highest DPS, but you're going to have to stick around for the honorary mentions to hear what those ones are. Now for the number 1, number 2 slot. So I say that as the number 2 slot technically on my list, but the number 1 otherwise, and you'll see what I mean, because the number 1 slot is definitely going to a pair of rocket launchers. We are going to be talking about something that should surprise nobody, because if you've been playing this game and you've been listening to my streams, you've been hanging out, you should know that the Silent Specter is just, no matter how you slice it, the highest DPS non-mythic SMG in the entire game. I was going to say assault weapon, but it got, classed as an SMG, but that changed nothing. It is just amazing. Not only does it have the highest damage per second, like it just it just doesn't yield in terms of DPS. If you hit headshots, you double your DPS. It has an insane base crit chance of 20. Most weapons have 10, and the good weapons have 15. This one has a base of 20, so it crits basically every other shot. Its fire rate is nice and clean. 12 isn't insanely high. It's not slow, and it's perfectly enough because that crit's going to be hitting so much damage, you're not going to want it to shoot too fast anyway. Not like you're going to be dragging your magazine of 52, assuming you're running a mag size perk. And then, of course, a 2-second reload time without a reload perk. I mean, come on. High magazine size, high damage, very acceptable fire rate, and a really fast reload. This weapon literally only has one drawback, and that's its range/accuracy. And even then, when we're talking about Save the World, 90% of your fights are happening within a 4 to 6 tile radius anyway, or 6 tile or less, I should say. So the range drop off for this thing more than covers that and will almost never hold you back if you're using this weapon responsibly. The Silent Specter is just amazing. And now this spot is tied with not one but two other weapons, and that's because the Bobcat does pretty much everything I just said about the Silent Specter, but in different ways. Where the Silent Specter has, you know, a little bit of a faster fire rate, it has less mag size and a little bit of a faster reload, but the Bobcat is absolutely almost identical damage per second. It can be perked to shoot extremely fast because it has a 2 fire rate perk. And every time anybody's ever sliced it, you know, the Bobcat and the Silent Specter have been fighting for #1 crown, and every single place where they don't hold up next to each other, the other one just kind of handles it. You can see that if I compare the two, let me actually do the same element if at all possible here, you can see that they just trade blows. You know, Bobcat has higher damage, Specter has higher crit chance and fire rate, has a higher mag size, better reload, better impact. I mean, they just trade blows in every single way, and I would honestly believe that you can use the Bobcat and the Silent Specter interchangeably and be perfectly effective in combat. Everybody has their preferences towards one or the other, but I do believe when it comes down, you know, mathematically, they are neck and neck. That being said, this one might surprise a lot of people, but the HackSAW actually compares extraordinarily well as well. The HackSAW, when I had my Bobcat spec'd in a fire rate damage loadout, which is identical DPS to crit rate and crit damage, they were pretty much the same. But the HackSAW has its own little perk, so if you run reload speed on it, not only does it have a faster reload, but a whopping 100 base magazine size, which can be buffed to 175 if you want to take a hit to the reload. And then it just has very, very consistent damage, accuracy, mag size for high rate of sustained fire that will just mow down, you know, saw away, if you will, everything in front of you. That's why I believe the Bobcat, Silent Specter, and HackSAW share the crown as some of the best ranged weapons in the entire game. I say it that way because the #1 slot just has to be taken by the rocket launchers, which are their faithful companions in my opinion. Anybody who's playing this game should probably know that a launcher isn't really going to be your primary. It just doesn't have the durability, it's too expensive, it's just not a responsible way to play. You can do it. I mean, to save the world, you can pretty much do anything, but the rockets are usually not your primary. But I just wouldn't be responsible if I didn't put the De-Atomizer, the Santa's Little Helper, and the Metal Marauder tied for the #1 slot. Obviously, like I said right off the bat, the Wrath is just, this thing is just a laser beam. That zap cannon of a weapon, not to, you know, take away from anything, because we all know that the zap cannon is bottom tier, but I do mean it is literally a zap cannon. The thing's just a laser beam. It just obliterates everything in front of you, even after the nerf. If you don't have that, then the De-Atomizer and the Santa's Little Helper kind of trade blows. Now, I'll put the Metal Marauder on the back burner for now, simply because it's basically the black metal equivalent of the Santa's Little Helper. It has, if I'm not mistaken, higher damage, which isn't immediately noticeable because its 5th perk adds the bonus damage based on your missing health, which does not factor into the sheet DPS. So even though it looks like it's less, it's quite a bit more. But it also hurts you in the process and has a slower reload time, but a much higher impact. If you roll all impact perks on this thing, you'll send smashers flying with every single shot. So it's got a little bit more utility, but as I mentioned earlier with the Black Drum Shotgun, it's an extremely dangerous weapon to use because you will kill yourself in the process if you're not careful. That being said, it's, you know, functionally in the world of damage, the same as the Santa's Little Helper because they're both hitting for more than enough to one-shot all but basically miss monsters. So focusing back on the Santa's Little Helper and the De-Atomizer, they basically trade blows wherever. It's not exactly going to show up on the sheet DPS, but the De-Atomizer shoots in a singular explosion that that blows out to 7 more explosions for a great area of effect damage. So even if it's not immediately hitting as hard as the Santa's Little Helper, it consistently does more damage in a wide area. And I also hold it in a very firm belief that the sheet DPS is bugged because it says it's doing 43 damage, but in my experience, it's just doing more. I almost never watch it hit for less than 100k, and even if it does, if I'm mistaken, it explodes out to make up for that damage greatly. Sometimes a smasher will get impacted at just the right way to hit it at, on the side, and then the explosions that come out from that initial explosion will hit the smasher again. I've one-shotted many mist monsters doing that, and it is quite a treat to behold. Now, the Santa's Little Helper basically does that initial impact, that strong, hard-hitting damage, but it doesn't explode out. So, you're kind of, you got a lot of give and take here. And the Santa's Little Helper used to have quite a bit less durability, and I do believe that's true. I think the actual ammo consumption for the De-Atomizer is less, so even though they both have 150 durability, the De-Atomizer may last quite a bit longer, so it might be a bit more economical solution. But the Santa's Little Helper is just such a hard-hitting weapon. What more can I say? And that's basically my top 10 list, you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I thought this would be a lot tougher, but when I started making the list, it was a bit easier to weed out the best weapons from the worst than I thought. I mean, you really just got to simplify it to, like, from my experience and my gameplay, watching other people play, playing with friends, and talking to chat, what are the true weapons that I always default back to when I'm not just trying out something new? And that's what I showed you guys here today. That being said, I'm going to go straight into some honorable mentions, and that's right off the bat is the old Bazooka. I love to give this weapon its credit where credit is due. I used to have it as energy, nature, water, and fire just to pull it out whenever I needed it for the correct mission. And that, I think, is still a good way to go. If you're a lower level player and you don't have any of the launchers that I've mentioned here today, I think the Bazooka is still a fantastic choice. I mean, durability might not be useful anymore because they buffed all the rockets to last for quite a bit longer. So running reload on this is not a bad way to go. You'll get off more shots per second. Double damage is because crit rating and crit damage is a pretty bad choice when you're shooting once, like 0.75 shots a second. It's just not fast enough. I mean, you have to reload, so that's not really a real number anyway. Realistically, with this, we're shooting every 1.8 seconds, so that's just too few shots to be crossing your fingers for a crit shot. I don't know why I have damaged mist monsters on this. It was a very long time ago when I used this weapon. The Santa's Little Helper came out and just dwarfed it in every single statistical department. But if you don't have any other options, the Bazooka is still a fantastic choice. And again, I'm catering a little bit to the newer players with some of these honorable mentions by bringing up the Siegebreaker. Oh, it's an old favorite. I know, it's the Battle Royale scar. It's the first thing we looked for when we came to save the world. It doesn't hold up in the late game. It's not the best weapon, but it does actually do pretty decent damage. I say that, but with the right loadout, I made a video on this recently where I was kind of surprised at how well it actually did in the late game. It's just not, it's really just not a crown jewel. But if you don't have tons of options, this is a weapon you could use all the way up to Twine Peaks. You might want to replace it for something a little bit better down the line, but it is a fantastic choice for the early game. And that brings me to the Double Boiler. I mentioned it would be in the honorable mentions. It is an extremely hard-hitting, very good range shotgun that is honestly just a treat to use. I recently rediscovered this when I was playing around with shotguns, and it just slays. This thing is an amazing shotgun. It almost always one-shots, and then it crits whenever you're shooting at the mist monsters. Oh, it's beautiful. And I can also compare it to the Stalwart Squire, which I can't actually show because, I don't have the weapon for a very good reason. The Stalwart Squire, if I recall, shoots, I think it hits for like 130,000 base damage, depending on how you load it out. And if you crit, it does north of like 500k. It is, I think, commonly regarded as the strongest shotgun in the game, but it has a 1-to-1 damage to durability to shot ratio. What that means is every single shot, it loses a durability point, and it only lasts for about 300 shots if you make it Shadow Shard, which is extraordinarily expensive. For reference, most shotguns can get off about most weapons can get off about your ammo capacity. So you can hold about 1,200 shots. Most shotguns in my testing last for about 900 shots. So to have 1/3 or less your normal shots for a weapon is just not worth the amount of power that it gives you, not to mention you have to reload after every shot. but this video wouldn't be complete if I didn't mention a weapon that powerful. And lastly, I think is the one true honorable mention. This is the one where I'm really talking about a weapon that probably should have been on the list, and I probably should have brought it up, but it's the Pain Train. It's literally named the Pain Train because it does so much damage. It's just a very good weapon. The reason I took it off this list is because every time I've ever used it, it's just the accuracy, you guys. It just doesn't, maybe I'm biased, maybe it's the same as the Silent Specter, but I just feel like it can't really work in all of the situations that I want it to. That being said, it is a wonderfully themed holiday weapon, and it's just a very powerful weapon. So if you can get the right perk on this bottom one, damage or crit, or I don't even know all the options, it's a very, very good weapon and should definitely be given a consideration. That being said, I'm also going to add it to, add that right in here with the Swan, because the Swan is very similar in a way. It has the exact same crit, you know, like 6 perk variant, and it's just another weapon that works really, really well, and you might have even forgot that it existed. So that's it. Those are my picks for the top 10 most relevant, most powerful weapons in Save the World, plus some honorable mentions to get my bases covered. There are a lot of weapons that could have been on this list, that probably should have been on this list, that are very, very powerful. I'm hovering over them now. Am I hinting hard enough? But if you thought something should have been on here, make a case for it in the comments below. Talk about it, you know, let me know what you thought, let me know if you agree or what if you disagree, what I should have added, maybe I didn't know something that I said, maybe I said something incorrect. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been a long time coming. I've been putting this video off for a while, so I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you guys have a nice day, and I'll see you in the next one.